So October may be a horror month, and right now I feel like thinking outside the box a little bit. I'm going to be reviewing the 1991 remake of Cape Fear, directed by Martin Scorsese. Now, this movie isn't entirely a horror movie. It's some people would classify it mostly as a thriller, but it's so disturbing, so shocking, and so unnerving that you gotta call it part horror. You know what? Later on, like later this month, and in like future wise, I'll end up doing more horror things. So yeah, I want to save some obvious horror things for a little bit later. So let's get right into it. Cape Fear, directed by Martin Scorsese, is a remake of a 1962 film starring Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum. This one is, I don't know, I always thought this one was better. I know that a lot of people disagree with me, but this one, it's more explicit, it's more shocking, and the performance by Robert De Niro as the antagonist really it's ultimately the clincher for me. I know that Robert Mitchum does a great job in the original version playing the psychopath Max Cady, but I don't know, I just thought that De Niro was even crazier in this. This is probably De Niro's craziest performance that he's ever done. It's his um, most brutal performance. His film that I reviewed on this channel called Mean Streets was well, actually, is probably De Niro's biggest contender for, as opposed to Mean Street. I mean, as opposed to Cape Fear, as being De Niro's wildest, most shocking performance that he's ever done. But I can't help but think that this one was even more wild. After all, in this one, he plays a convicted rapist, and they even show him with a girl, and he violently rapes her. And yeah, I don't want to ruin too much of this, but let's just say it's totally out of control. That scene alone, and yeah, the way that he tries to get to underage girls in this, it's also really shocking. This also stars Nick Nolte as the protagonist. He plays Sam Barman, who is a lawyer, and he's a really good lawyer too. He throws a case of okay, he's Max's lawyer, and he ends up throwing Max's case, purposefully loses, leading Max to be behind bars for 14 years. So when Max gets out, he decides to seek revenge on him because he knows that Sam could easily have gotten him out of prison. Now that's so yeah, that's what the movie's ultimately about. And Nick Nolte, he does do also a good job in this. I would say that in 1991, another film that I reviewed this is 1991 called The Prince of Tides. This movie as a whole is better than The Prince of Tides, but I would call Nolte's performance in The Prince of Tides better than this. Yeah, yeah, that's ultimately the thing with when certain actors do multiple films in the same year, one's going to come out better. But in 1998, when Nick Nolte also did two films in the same year, Thin Red Line and Affliction, yeah, tough to say which one was better. So, yeah, once Max gets released from prison, he begins to terrorize Sam's family. And yeah, there's one scene where he gets to Sam's daughter, his naive daughter, who's played by Juliette Lewis, and it's a very disturbing. It's one of the most disturbing scenes in the film. They just talk to each other, but it's very very eerie. And yeah, that's really a lot of the movie is just disturbing nature and suspense, and because the movie is so disturbing, I think it does qualify as being horror. The movie's directed by Martin Scorsese, so you know that there's going to be lots of cool camera stuff. Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum do make appearances in this, since they were the original Max and Sam, and I think that was a really smart move too. Um, yeah, the only thing that I thought, yeah, this movie it's not a masterpiece. Some it is kind of repetitive, and some scenes that do are longer than they really should be. But you know, it still is a mighty fine film. I do enjoy it. I did enjoy it immensely. Well, okay, I shouldn't say I enjoyed it immensely. It's quite shocking, but you know, it still is a very well made film. I'm going to give Cape Fear from 1991 3.5 stars out of 4.